Dean Kamen, and he does not really need any introduction. He's world's famous inventor who has over more than 400 patents. He's an entrepreneur, inventor, and tireless advocate of science and technology. He was telling me earlier that he does the world's bigly generated invention, as well as to provide research and development for major corporate clients. He has received numerous awards. He was given the National Medal of Technology in 2000, presented by President Clinton. He was also awarded the Lemeson MIT Prize in 2002. He was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2005. He is also the founding first for inspiration and recognition of science and technology, and on and on. We are very fortunate to have him here. So let's give him a big Atlanta welcome, Dean Kamen.
Is a blur between all of those things. And every time I get involved in one aspect of one of them, over time, it brings me into another one of them. I've come to believe, by the way, that ADD is my strongest personal asset. I start on a project and you never know where it's going to end up. So in that regard, I warn you up front, if it seems like I'm really here with 3 separate talks, it's because I am. I think they overlap, and I hope I can connect them in a credible way for you. But I guess I believe more strongly than ever that trying to deal with any one of those things without the other 2 is why the world is facing so much difficulty getting 7 or 8 billion people that are educated, that can use technology and have good health to even communicate or cooperate with each other. So I'll start with the health one, because that is my day job. And then I think you'll see how it morphs into a small syringe as the reservoir instead of an IV bag. He's very proud of this stuff, so he'd taken on trips with him. He did a guest residency at Yale, at Harvard. And docs that treat adults would see these little things sitting in these isolettes. And they would all call me and ask if I could make ones for them. It didn't start out to be a business. It would have been a terrible business because brothers don't pay anything. But all these docs needed these little delivery systems for adults that could leave the hospital. And a few of them wanted to try drugs like insulin. So there I was, giving 1s and 2s of these little boxes to my brother for very, very rare cancers. And suddenly there are docs in major medical schools that are saying, you should make that thing for the most broadly required chronic therapy the world knows, insulin for diabetics. So I ended up starting a company that made the first wearable insulin pumps. We then sold that company, which was resold again to your sponsor, Medtronic. Hard. Because making medical grade water, the gold standard, the way it's done is distillation. No filter, no carbon filter, no osmosis membrane, no chlorine tablet, all of which will get rid of organics and inorganics and chelate heavy metals. And in Asia, a lot of the deep wells have arsenic in them. You can take that out with activated charcoal. And a lot of Africa, there's Cryptosporidium Gerardi. You can take that out and kill it with chlorine. But I don't need water that you can drink. I need water that you can inject. So we decided, use the gold standard, build a distiller. The other advantage of making a distiller is no matter where we put our dialysis machine, you put it on this machine, and whether the water has a problem with organics or inorganics or hexavalent chrome or arsenic or krypton. It doesn't matter. You don't even have to check the inlet water. You just run it through the machine. Because the second law of thermodynamics is subtle. It's not cruel, it's just subtle. Because all the energy you put in to turn water into a vapor, that heat of vaporization, you could recover in the heat of fusion once it recondenses back to a liquid from a vapor. The trouble is it's not going to condense back to a liquid until you cool it a little, and you'd have to waste and reject all the heat. Unless you take that heated vapor and you compress it while it's still a vapor. You do work on it, integral at PDV, Q. You'll heat that vapor, and even though it got hotter than it was when it turned into a vapor, at that high pressure, it will turn itself back into a liquid. If you conveniently have a counterflow heat exchanger in the system where that happened, as it comes back into a pure medical grade droplet of liquid water and runs through the heat exchanger, the heat is extracted by the next amount of water coming into this closed system, which is magnetically stir it without mechanical contact so that it could run years without a lot of intervention. It would be possible. Simple, quiet, efficient, almost 50 times as efficient as an ordinary still. That was such a compelling idea, and it seemed like it would be an instant overnight success, which it more or less was after 10 years. And we made one. As we were working on it, though, as I said, my ADD was getting me. I said, you know, this thing, sure, it'll take potable water, it'll make it medical grade water as a convenience to the rich people in the world to make their dialysis more convenient and cost effective. But a distiller will take anything and make it medical grade. It doesn't have to start potable. It could be water coming from a toxic well. It could be ocean water full of salt. It could be a chemical waste. It doesn't matter. The distilled water is perfect. And it doesn't need filters and membranes and chemicals. So let's make it a self-contained, rugged unit, small enough to carry anywhere, big enough that it would produce a few kilowatts of electricity. One of its loads would be these water machines. But then that basic little electric generator could give everybody lighting if it's LEDs in a small village. It could give everybody access to the internet, charge their cell phones, give them power for their laptops. But again, you have to assume it's going to a place where they can't run down to the local Exxon station to get some nice pure gasoline or diesel fuel. No, it would have to be a box that could make electricity out of any liquid or gaseous fuel. So an internal combustion engine was kind of out of the question. They've been around 100 years and you don't see them supplying electricity unless you have great infrastructure. But a fully sealed Stirling cycle thermal generator would work. So we made a little box, and we proved it would work, by the way, by running it on methane coming off of cow dung. We took 2 of these machines, smaller than this, put them in Bangladesh, and for 6 months we electrified 2 villages. Equipment, will you at least help us try a couple of demonstration programs using your global reach with our water? And he said he would. So we set to work on that machine, and here it is. The only thing Muhtar asked for, he's not a very tech guy, but he certainly knows markets. He said, Dean, you know that black machine? Can you make it red? So we did. And there in the middle is Muhtar Kent, the chairman of Coke, and next to him is, you might think odd, but an icon in popular culture, will.i.am. And here we are at the London Olympics, where he's showing the world a prototype of our next generation water machine. By the time we finished that and wanted to start the trials, though, we realized just the water machine isn't enough. We can put it in schools, have an education crisis. People from all over the world still come to our universities. We still spend more money on K through 12 education than any place in the world. So I asserted 25 years ago, in America, you get the best of what you celebrate. We don't have an education crisis. It's not what we don't have enough of, it's what we have too much of. distractions and nonsense that, particularly to some segments of our population, women and minorities, are given role model after role model on television, in sports, Hollywood. And every role model they see in particular comes from the world of entertainment or the world of professional sports. If you go out on the streets here in Atlanta and ask all the kids that randomly come by, can you tell me the name of a famous living football player, basketball player, singer, actress, model? They'd think you're crazy. They could go on with lists for hours. Ask any kid on the streets in this very sophisticated city, can you tell me the name of any famous passion and focus for doing something with their life out there? Because inventing is hard. I said, we have a model that works to get kids passionate. Sports. Let's turn science, technology, engineering, and math into a really cool sport. Particularly then women and minorities that already love that model will jump all over it. Here's the rub. Nobody's going to play a sport in this country, or in most countries in the world, unless there are superstars. By analogy, I would tell you, I'm sitting there 25 years ago saying, boy, if I make a fun sport out of science and technology, at best it'll be another version of a science fair, giving advantage to the advantaged, to the kids whose parents are going to make sure they take advantage of it, and it'll make the digital divide even worse. The kids that are dropping out will drop out in larger numbers. Public education will get worse. No, I don't want a science fair. I want the Olympics. Well, again, by analogy, how many kids in the US play cricket? But we don't assert in this country we have a critical cricket shortage. And if we did, we wouldn't ask the Department of Education to fix it. Kids will do. You're not teachers. You don't know how to teach kids math or science. Why don't you let the teachers teach? But all of your companies create the superheroes. You create the culture of the country. You make it fun for kids to work really hard at things that at best might break their knees or necks. Then you wonder why they can't do algebra. Why don't you use your expertise to help us create a sport and lend us some of your internal people to be our superstars? 23 of those companies in that year agreed. They were little companies like Boeing, Intel, General Electric, United Technologies, the big guys. They said, Dean, if you can make a sport that's just like a high school sport, it's short, it's intense, it's 6 weeks long, they do it after school aspirationally, it doesn't end with quizzes and tests like what they do in school that they don't like, it ends with double elimination tournaments and trophies and school bands and cheerleaders and mascots, to now 104 cities, 15 or 20 per weekend around the United States and around the world have their regionals. Then the championship, we took over the city of St. Louis. For many years, by the way, the championship was in the building next door, built for the 1996 Olympics. By the way, for those of you who think I'm making it up, I have a very quick graphic review of the 25-year history of FIRST with a couple of fun videos at the end. But there we are in 1992, the President of the United States then is standing in my old brick mill in Manchester saying, I'll bring the winners to the White House. There have been 4 presidents since I started this. I've asked them, all 4 of them, the same 2 things. Mr. President, please don't help us. The last thing I need is this thing to become the dull, stultifying curriculum stuff in class, right next to phonics. But there are arenas that got bigger and bigger until finally by 2002, in our 7th year there, they built us the largest temporary arena ever built and said, we can't double again for you next year, Dean. I said, all right, we'll make you one of our super regionals next year, but we'll move to an arena of the right scale. In the next year, we moved to the Astrodome in Houston. By then, the robots weigh about 80 pounds, and the playing field was half the size of this stage. Then we moved here to the Georgia Dome for about 5 years. And by then the robots could weigh up to 100 pounds. And we had some pretty spectacular, every year we changed the rules, the games. It was pretty amazing. Then we had a third president, and yep, even a president not knowing for embracing technology would bring these kids to the White House. And for those of you that are interested, if you do let a kid chase the President of the United States around the White House with a 120-pound robot, you will find that the Secret Service has no sense of humor. This is what we've looked like for the last few years. People, most of them who do not have the education or vision or capacity to solve their own problems. And the few that have that typically aren't all that interested in helping solve it for somebody else, which leaves it to a very small group, among the privileged, very small group, that the world is depending on. That would be you. Thanks.